Hey, I'm Josh Vaughan, PT at our Apex Accelerator Rehab program here in Lexington. Today we're going to look at a few lifts to hopefully help you feel more comfortable and do them safely either in your high school weight room, college weight room, or in the gym by yourself. We're going to check out the squat, we're going to look at a conventional deadlift, a trap bar deadlift, and a push press. Hope that this video helps you get a good understanding and that you can do these safely and get you bigger, faster, stronger. So we're gonna start by looking at the setup before we start lifting here. We wanna make sure you're safe, that's first and foremost. So we've got Lee set up here with some safety straps. Your rack might have pins, it might have bars, or you might have a spotter. Either way is fine, right? But you wanna make sure that something is there for you to be safe. The next thing we've already done is we've got this adjusted for his height so that he can go under it and comfortably unrack it. He doesn't have to bend down too far and it's not gonna bend him over, okay? So Lee, go ahead and get up under the bar for me. As he approaches the bar, we're gonna make sure that the bar is resting across his shoulders. It's gonna be on his muscles. We're not gonna let it sit on your spine. We don't want it up on your neck. We're gonna put a little undue stress on that. If you look at his grip width, he's just outside his shoulder width a little bit. He's got a nice tight grip around the bar. We don't wanna see your hands loose. So he can go ahead and unrack it here and take about 2 steps back. And then to start the lift, we're gonna think about sitting back into a chair a little bit. So we're gonna initiate the lift with your hips going back. Go ahead, Lee. And then we're gonna sit straight down into the hole. As we get to here, just below parallel, we get a nice pause and then we can come on back up straight. Perfect. Good, go ahead and rack it back up. So we're gonna start looking at some common faults that we see in the back squat just to try to keep you safe. Let's see one more good squat here, Lee first. So you notice kind of where his chest is. We can see his shirt really well. You notice the depth that he's going to. We're gonna look at now what can happen when we get to the bottom. If we go too deep and we lose our low back positioning, we lose our lumbar control. So go ahead, Lee, let's see this. So you can notice as he gets to the bottom, you see him rounding, his chest drops, we can no longer read his shirt. That's just gonna put a little bit of extra stress on your low back and potentially be injurious for you, okay? The next common fault that we see is coming out onto your toes. So a lot of times this happens when we start the squat too far forward. We're trying to keep our chest up too far. So he can go ahead and start here. You notice his heels pop up, right? He starts shaking, looks way less strong in that position. That's because he can't transfer force into the floor nearly as effectively when your heels are lifted up. All right, the next one we're gonna look at is we call it good morning squat. This is when we're trying to get out of the hole, and a lot of times with a little bit more weight, your body's trying to figure out how to stand back up. So as we start going down, right, Lee's gonna keep good form, but then as he's trying to come back up, his butt is gonna raise up first and then his chest follows. Again, just gonna put a little bit more stress on your low back and potentially hurt you if you do that. And now the last one we're gonna look at is just your knee positioning, okay? Some people call this a cowboy squat. So as we go down, we really wanna make sure that we keep our knees out from each other. As we're coming out of the hole here, his knees are gonna start coming together. Again, more stress on your knees here and you're not gonna be as strong in this position. It's usually a sign that your hips are a little bit weak, right? And you need to spend a little more time working on those. The next lift we're gonna look at is the deadlift. We're gonna begin by looking at your setup. For the deadlift, your setup is really important for the safety and the efficiency of the entire lift, okay? So Lee, I'm gonna have you approach the bar. We're gonna start by having you walk all the way to the bar. I want your shins to be touching the bar on setup. That's gonna make sure that we get it in the right spot to start and it's not gonna be too far out away from your body. You notice his foot width, we're about shoulder width apart. That can be a little bit inside or outside for personal preference or kind of how your body is set up, but shoulder width is a good place to start. We're gonna go down and grip the bar. We're gonna use a double overhand grip here, meaning they're both facing the same direction, and we're gonna be about shoulder width apart or just outside of where your legs are, so that as you go to stand back up, your arms and your knees don't hit or you don't push your knees in any further together, okay? Now, before we lift this bar off the floor, we want to begin by building tension through our body. The way we're going to do that, Lee's going to squeeze his shoulders back. We're going to make sure that our butt is low. We don't want to see it risen up too far here. And if I'm looking at you from the side, I want to look at your shins and see them about vertical. I don't want to see where your knees are way far out over top of your toes, right? Or your chest is dropped that far towards the ground, okay? Now, we're gonna go ahead and get back in that good position. Good, shoulders are back. Nice tension is built. And now we're gonna try to think about dragging that bar straight up our shins. Perfectly, looks great. As he gets to the top, he squeezes his butt, and now we have to get it back down. Getting back down is just as important. We're gonna begin that by sitting our hips back. We wanna keep that bar tight to our legs the same way that we did on the way up. Now we're gonna look at some common faults that we see in the deadlift to try to keep you safe. The first one let's look at, we've already kind of talked about your setup, but I wanna show you what can happen if we've got your setup incorrect and what that can mean for the rest of the lift. So Lee, we're gonna set up intentionally incorrect here. I want that bar to be a little further out away from your shins. So if we have the bar away from your shins, when we go down to grip the bar, go ahead down for me, we're gonna have to move our knees really far forward. And then when we go to pick that bar up, so go ahead and try to lift that for me. Notice how he had to get around his knees to get the bar up. So with the shin not being vertical or straight up and down, it's going to be kind of tilted forward, and then that bar has to get further away from us to be able to finish the lift. The further the bar is away, the more stress is going to be on your low back. Go back down to the bottom, Lee. Now the next thing we're gonna look at from this position, and another thing that can happen if we have this bar set up too far, is we're gonna see his back potentially round. The further that bar is away from us, the more stress is gonna be here and the more strength it takes for you to keep that bar tight to you. So as he goes to stand up, you're gonna notice, you see his middle back round, right? Yet again, more stress on your low back, potentially higher risk of injury here. And then the other thing let's look at while we're here is what happens if we overextend at the top. So when we finish our lift, if we're pulling too far or too hard and we lean back too far, we're gonna bring more stress to your low back again. You wanna finish perfectly tall, kind of think about squeezing your butt. And then once you get there, you're done with the lift and we can begin descending. So the next exercise we're gonna look at is a trap bar deadlift. Now the name trap bar deadlift is a little bit of a misnomer. The mechanics here are gonna much more closely replicate a squat as opposed to a traditional straight bar deadlift. A few points to look at on setup here. Lee, if you look at his feet, we're about shoulder width apart, very similar to a normal squat width. As we go down to grab the bar, we want to make sure that your middle finger is right on the center knurling, or if your bar just has a center mark, we want to make sure that we're centered there for balance. So as he sets up, we're going to make sure that he raises his chest. We're gonna think about building tension, squeezing our shoulders back. And then as we start to lift, we wanna make sure his shoulders and his hips are moving together. Go ahead and stand that up one time for me, Lee. And then same thing, we wanna think about the reverse of that on the way down. Chest is gonna stay tall, and let's go ahead and start on the way down. Perfect, all the way down. Beautiful. So let's look at some common faults that we see with the trap bar deadlift now. One of the biggest things that we see is on the initiation of the lift. So Lee, let's go ahead and get set up correctly here. Now we want to make sure, especially as we get heavy, right, when we start to pull this bar off the ground, that we don't let our butt raise before our chest does. So go ahead and show me that, Lee. Right, and you can kind of see what happens. We couldn't read his shirt when he went to pull it off the ground. His back had a lot of rounding, a lot of flexion in it, which can really increase your risk of injury there. All right, let's go ahead and take it back down to the ground. Now we're gonna look at one more lift. This is gonna be similar to the squat that we looked at a few minutes ago, where your knees might tend to track in together. Your heels might wanna raise off the ground. So we wanna really focus on keeping our feet flat. Go ahead and show me one where you let your heels raise up, Lee. Oh, and you can kind of see what that did. That forced him to drop his chest. And then let's look at one where we struggle to kind of control our knee position. So as he lifts, you watch and kind of see how his knees want to come in together. Again, more stress on the knees, right? And going to be less efficient in moving that much weight. The next exercise we're going to look at is the push press. The push press is a great exercise for both the upper extremity and hip power. They work very well together. So let's start looking at the setup here, Matt. I'm going to have you unrack the bar. So on setup, we want our hands just outside of shoulder width with a good full grip around the bar. Your elbows are gonna be straight under the bar, not too far out front or back behind you, okay? And then like I said, this is hip driven, so that your initial push is gonna come from your hips. So we're gonna dip down, and then we're gonna jump the bar straight up, finishing with your arms straight up, your head through the bar, okay? We don't wanna see the bar too far out front or too far back behind you. So let's go ahead and look at one more rep. We dip down and then jump the bar straight up. Good, finishing nice and tall at the top. Perfect. And come on back. Let's look at some common faults that we tend to see with the push press. One of the biggest ones that we see is the dip being incorrect from the start. So as Matt goes down, he's gonna show us a bad one here. You notice how far his knees are coming forward and his heels are raising off the ground. That's not gonna allow us to push into the ground and transfer force back into the bar to get it overhead, okay? So we wanna make sure that as we dip, our feet stay flat the whole time and we don't let your heels pop up. The next one we're gonna look at, Matt, go ahead and take it all the way to the top for me, is at the top, we tend to see people leaning really far back. This can be a sign that your shoulders are too tight, right? Or your shoulders and your core are just not strong enough together to be able to keep the bar straight overhead. So you wanna think about when we're at the top, that the bar is straight over top of my shoulders, not back behind it, and I'm not leaning back. Good. Thanks for tuning in with us today. Hope you have a better understanding of how to do these correctly, and good luck.